Thank you, Inshallah, for that package. And we'll go straight to the interview section and see how with me in the studio, Mr. Ayo Fadaka, Director of Publicity, and Barrister Benga Akimoyo. A lawyer who will be taking a look at this development. Mr. Fadaka, as the Director of Publicity of PDP in Ondo State, how did you receive that judgment on Friday?
Well, I won't say that it came to us exactly as a shock, because we have come to realize that anything can come out of the court of Justice Abang. He's a judge who has given sundry rulings or even verdicts that have stood justice on his head. And he's a judge whose judgments in most cases have always been reversed at the appeal courts. What was much more amazing was that the issue Justice Abang had to contend with, to adjudicate on the day in question, was not consistent with the ruling he gave. I am reliably informed that he was to do a committal, to do a content of court case, and which in any case necessitates a committal on INEC. And when he saw that that could not be done, he simply made a U-turn and decided to introduce into the matter a Jimo Ibrahim, who was not one of the plaintiffs of the case, who had nothing to do with the case. He introduced him into the matter and asked INEC to recognize him as the candidate of the PDP. And again, Igitai Ojegede was equally not in any case before him. If justice is the essence of what he's supposed to do, as a layman, as lawyers we probably call me, but what is fundamental about justice is that you must not do anything to injure the interest of the other. He never had Igitai Ojegede out, never had the PDP out, and he gave such a verdict. Well, the good thing is that Abang has come to be recognized with lots of that kind of judgments, and nobody seems to be taking him serious. INEC in Ondo State has since come out to say that, well, they are aware of Abang's judgment ruling, but that they are not taking to it until the Court of Superior until the Superior Court gives a verdict on it. However, let me use this opportunity to tell all members of the PDP and indeed the entire general public.
We'll still come to that, because I know the judgment has actually done so many things, and the public will still talk to the members of the party. Barrister, let's take a look at this. When chairman of PDP was actually addressing the journalists yesterday, he talked about the fact that Mr. Jimo Ibrahim and Mr. Igitai Ojegede were not part of the suit. So what does that mean in the face of the law?
Well, thank you very much for that question. It's very complicated when you listen to lawyers speak in their field of play. But what is important is that something as sensitive as the governorship election of a state, which is to take place next month, the general public needs to understand the nitty-gritty of the issues. And that's why I'm here this morning to break things down. When you have a suit, you have to have at least two parties who are in opposing camps. So for all intents and purposes, in this particular case, you have what's called a plaintiff and you have a defendant. You have a claimant and you have a defendant. So somebody is bringing an action against somebody else. You've wronged me, or you've taken my property, or you've done something against me. Let me give an example. A landlord is owed rent. He can't get his rent, so he takes his tenant to court. Now, the landlord gets a lawyer, the tenant gets a lawyer. And because there's a conflict between the two parties, what should happen is that they have separate lawyers, because there's a conflict of interest between the two parties. That is an underlying factor which I'll come to later, but it sets the template for what happened in this Abang judgment of June. Eitayo Jegede was not a plaintiff, he was not a claimant in this particular case. In the same way, Barrister Jimoh was not a plaintiff, nor was he a defendant in this particular matter. So we will say they are neither parties, nor are they interested parties in the matter that was in front of the judge. So it seems strange that all of a sudden a judge will go outside the discussions inside his courtroom and decide to give a ruling or an order or a judgment on something that, as you could say in layman's term, does not concern him. So this is why, as Fadak has rightly pointed out, we don't need to have much of a concern about the order that was made yesterday.
I have the text of that press briefing. I will just read a part out now for us to actually explain on it. It is, according to that statement, the above case was concluded on the 29th of June 2016, and the reliefs that have to do with election filed through and were tied to 2019 general election. There is no difference between the suit and 2016 Ondo State governorship election. So how come are we now having this judgment that has to do with the Ondo State election?
Well, if you want me to explain it a bit further, in June, and precisely on the 29th of June, there was a judgment that was given by Justice O.E. Abang in the Federal High Court. Now, the parties that were in front of him on that day were 9. 9 plaintiffs came before him and said, look, there's an issue here. In our zone, southwest zone of the PDP, we had congresses in 2014. And guess what? Those people who are elected are supposed to be in office for 4 years. So therefore, we want the court to make a pronouncement that those who are elected should stay in office till 2018. And therefore, they should decide the fate of the party in 2019. They asked the PDP to give representation and INEC to give representation. Justice Abang on that day said, I agree with you. And he gave them what they sought. Bear in mind, that is in relation to 2018 and 2019 general elections. It doesn't really concern us when we're talking about a 2016 governorship election.
So that was why Mr. Haitali didn't go to court at all.
That is why nobody in PDP Ondo State was interested. And in fact, those people who got the judgment in Ondo State, if they look at the judgment they got, and specifically on page 18 of that said judgment, because I've read it in full, the judge said, I noticed that elections took place in some states to appoint congresses, appoint officers, and he mentions the states where it took place. Funny enough, Ondo State was not included. They mentioned Lagos, Ogun, Oyo, Ekiti, and Osun, but Ondo State was not included. Now maybe that was deliberately, because the judge realized that it did not apply to Ondo. But for our own purposes, even if they want to say Ondo should have been included, what we are saying is, if at all that issue is correct in law, it relates to 2019 general elections. And therefore, we didn't need to make any issue of it. 1, Eitayo Jegede was not a party. 2, Clement Faboyede, who is the party chairman in Ondo State, was not a party. So you can't go and take up somebody else's matter. That's the issue. And it's not an issue of concern for the elections that are to hold next month. But what then happened was on Friday, the Ondo State representative in that suit, his name is Poroye, who leads a group, went to court and said, INEC are not following your judgment that you gave me 3 months ago. They should be forced to follow that judgment, which is contempt of court. If the court makes a judgment and says, this is the position, everybody is expected to follow it. So they went to get contempt proceedings against INEC. Of course, PDP are not in contempt, according to the parties, according to what we believe or what we feel must have happened. And of course, a judge who is indeed worth the salt, or to look at the issue and say, if somebody has contravened my judgment, then that person should be in prison. That person should go to jail. And that can be the only logical outcome from those proceedings which took place on Friday. So for a judge to now order something else would be going over and above expectations in law. And that is why we're on safe grounds for saying that we're going to challenge that decision.
Yeah, we will soon come to